What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Headhunter Hideout. Super excited today to have Craig Fisher with us. He's the founder of TalentNet Media. Craig, I'm so happy to have you on as a guest. I'd love for you just to give a quick introduction on who you are, what you do, what you're up to, and I'd love to hear that from you.
Well, thanks, Joel. Appreciate that. I'm Craig Fisher, and as Joel said, I'm the owner of TalentNet Media, and TalentNet is a consulting business in the recruitment space. We also help sales teams, and what we do is assess your funnel marketing process for talent attraction, all the way from candidate experience to employer brand and recruitment marketing, and then we help fill in the gaps where you might need tech or you might need a better process. And we've been doing that for many years now, so since 2010. And we also host the largest recruitment conference in the Southwest region of the United States, really probably the Southern United States, we could say that now.
Yeah.
And have been doing that also since 2009, hosting the TalentNet conference. And boy, do we have fun. And you're going to have to come join us again, Joel, the next time we do it.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think I'm just trying to think how we originally crossed paths. I know, funnily enough, I just listened to your episode of the podcast with Adam Posner. I think that's originally how I'd heard of you. I just kind of got more into the recruitment marketing space, and I heard that episode you did with him, and just started following you immediately. And then I think on Clubhouse is where we originally connected. So
right.
I'd love to hear from you, like how you got started off in the recruitment industry. That's typically how we start off the show. Mm-hmm. I'd love to just hear how you got into the industry, and then we can chat a little bit about what's changed and how you ended up doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I graduated from the University of Oklahoma in 1990, I had done some really good homework on how to get hired in the pharmaceutical industry. And one of the things I did was stay an extra semester and graduated in December, so there was less competition. I went to that level of detail to.
Who gave you that idea? Obviously you didn't have the LinkedIn coaches to tell you back then. Like, how did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, so I read books. I read lots of books. Martin Yate wrote an amazing series of books that I started reading, and I just studied. I mean, really, literally studied. I did an internship where I picked medical products from a warehouse, put them in a van, drove them to doctors' offices. That was one of my summer jobs. And learned all the technology, all the brands, all the what everything does, efficacy, all that stuff. And Glaxo hired me right out of school, so I went to Houston and sold pharmaceuticals for a couple of years, and then I got a better job selling hospital equipment. Did that for about 3.5 years, and then some things changed in the way that you could entertain doctors, and a lot of my friends in 1995 jumped over to physician recruiting. So work more directly with the hospitals, fly to locations and check them out and help doctors get jobs. And because I'd gotten so into the recruiting process to find my first job, I immediately became a team leader and manager in these early medical sales jobs that I had, and because I was good at hiring and recruiting. And I'm like, this sounds like it's for me. This sounds really great. And so I got recruited into it. And I recruited physicians for a year before, kind of the tech boom hit, and a bunch of us jumped over to tech in 1996 or so. And then I was off to the races. I was a recruiter of the year at Matrix Resources, rookie of the year, multiple things, became a team leader there, and then moved into a role where I was a director at another company, and we helped big, consulting firms like Accenture and KPMG build their teams to implement Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft, that sort of thing. I actually recruited and placed the first ever PeopleSoft consultant on a job in anywhere.
So what do you? I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I think obviously recruiting there's a ton of sales in recruiting as well. But outside of that, I mean, what do you think was the reason you were so successful in that first year? I mean, what skills kind of translated into you being successful in a recruitment right out of the gate like that?
Yeah, so a few things. I was manipulating systems from day one, and also I graduated with an advertising degree, and recruiting is largely an advertising business.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's a sales job. We call it recruiting, but it's a sales job, and it's the only sales job where your product can change its mind, right? And it's a thing where you can, if you understand systems well enough, figure out the efficiencies in whatever tracking system you're using, cadences when and where candidates will respond. I started teaching myself to code so that I could lurk in the online places where the techies were hanging out that I was trying to recruit, so I wasn't a threat. Right? I was asking legitimate questions, and every once in a while, oh, by the way, I'm hiring. But I came at everything with this sense of advertising and marketing. And if you do that, if you don't look at this as its own animal, what would you do in consumer marketing? What would you do in B2C sales? And how would you build a brand? How would you as a person stand out if you were working for Johnson and Johnson, right? You got to be interesting, and people, you need people to want to come to you. And so all those things I incorporated into my process.
And obviously, my take on this, and I'm sure anybody who's listening to this from my page, I'm all about building brands and inbound marketing, but I'm obviously coming it from the approach of online. And obviously, when you were doing that, there wasn't an online and as we know it. So I guess what did it look like back then? I mean, obviously now we can just say, hey, post on Twitter, post on Instagram, post on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What did that look like then for you? And I guess how did you bring that into the agency life that you were working in? And did you find yourself consulting people around you on how to do that and people coming to you for advice on that? What did that look like?
Yeah, always. So I became kind of a technology subject matter expert. Back then we had Monster came first, and Career Builder and Dice came quickly after that. And so I was learning how to manipulate those systems, right? I had already gotten good at writing ads for Sunday newspapers. So, the language part I had down, how to attract people with, how you describe a job. But, I was the job board master, and I literally wrote the instruction manual for our homegrown Lotus Notes applicant tracking system at Matrix. And then we had AOL chat rooms where people
I love that.
Yeah. And so there's all these techie chat rooms, and they would be no recruiters. And I was one of the few people that was ever let into some of these places. And so, all these different types of chat boards and, crazy stuff. I would spend all night hanging out, understanding when people were online. And so I started teaching myself Dreamweaver and Photoshop and how to code, and started building websites and practicing. And so I could go ask all these very legitimate questions, but I could also advertise my own jobs, because I figured out early on about SEO, which back then, man, it was kind of simple. There's nothing to it.
I think there's still people who are catching on to SEO as well. So obviously you're just way before your time with that. I just wanted to we've got Aldo out there. So Aldo, great. Thanks for tuning in. And a good friend of ours, Carrie, as well. Carrie, always great to see you. Hello from Tulsa. Always great to see you. And then look at this. We got my twin. So my evil digital doppelganger on there. Dave, good to see you.
Dave.
And then Mara, good to see you. And Lilahona, great to see you as well. Man, I feel like I want to jump to Clubhouse right away because I think Clubhouse is kind of like a online AOL, but I'm going to hold off on that. I'm curious to hear. Obviously back then there's not a lot of training for me. There's not a lot of training right now in the recruitment space when it comes to branding and writing. You're talking about things like copywriting and writing effective ads. Why do you think there's such a big emphasis on just pure outbound activity within, and this is speaking more from like the agency world, but you look at internal as well. Right. There's so much of an emphasis on being a hunter, being that person that can go out and find the passive candidates. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that there's such an emphasis on that within the agency world compared to, developing inbound strategies and understanding some of those marketing principles? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, all right. So a few things. You can give everybody all the technology that you want to, and a lot of these tech products try to, take the hunting part out of it for recruiters. Like, make it easy, have your inbox fill up with candidates. But in the agency world, you never actually look at all those candidates that hit your inbox that are applying. Like that's the last thing you want to do. Your applicants are usually the ones that are not the best candidates. You want this passive stuff, right? And it's just that hunters want to hunt. It's just like in Jurassic Park, right? T-Rex doesn't want to be fed.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a little bit of that. What we are seeing is recruiters starting to accept some automation to take non-recruiting activities out of their hands. So scheduling and things like that can be done. And then, the problem for most employers is they rely on agencies to do the hunting. The employers themselves, they can post their ads, they can do all that post and pray stuff. But ask any good talent acquisition manager in a large employer, and he'll say a lot of the time, most of their best recruitment hires come from agency background or agency training. And so, you got to learn that stuff, and you should. And the tools are going to change. There's always going to be tools. Your number one tool that you have is your phone.
Yeah,
that's by far your strongest tool. It's your sentient extension of yourself, right?
Yeah. What do you think in terms of I talked to a lot of agency recruitment leaders, and some of them have really embraced this idea of cold calling, a lot more kind of online strategy, and some are like, we just cold calling still works. So I guess what's your standpoint on that? I mean, obviously you just mentioned the phone. It's the most powerful tool for interviewing. I would agree. But what about in terms of like reaching out to people? Where do you stand on that? And how much importance do you place on building a brand online as a recruiter nowadays? Like, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah. So when I read the book Inbound, right, by the founders of HubSpot 10 plus years ago, it changed my life. It's sort of like when I read the 24-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss for the first time. Changed my outlook on things. And if you're not building a brand for yourself, how are you building a network, right? It's like if a tree falls in the woods, you post a job somewhere. If you don't have a big network, who's going to see it?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, without paying for a job board or something like that. But if you have 20,000+ people that follow you on LinkedIn, all of a sudden you've got an audience, right? And if you're smart about the way you post things, their audiences will see it, and their audiences will see it, and that's the genius of that geometric progression that you get in social media. So building your brand is where it should all start, though, because if you don't look good, if you don't look legit, if you just look like you're going to sell me something, I don't want to connect with you, right? You've got to be attractive, and so that's your brand building. And it's the same thing for employers, same thing for agencies. The agencies and the employers that don't think that they need to look attractive when people go check them out, that, oh, I'm just going to post a job and everybody will want to come work with us. They're not getting it. Their competitors are beating them.
Now, I know you help a lot of employers, right, with their branding, and almost helping them become more human, right, and
Yeah.
and showing the human side. So, what are some of the strategies that you advise people on doing, and like what are some of the challenges that you see or that you come against, like when you're consulting companies on this is how we become more human? Like, what are some of those roadblocks that you think are stopping most or a lot of employers with that employer branding, particularly the kind of the division between staying on brand and then kind of being human? Like how do you kind of coach people through that?
Well, so you just mentioned cold calling, and I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of that. And we didn't really answer that question in the last, but
Yeah.
that's part of staying more human. Like the most interesting recruitment approaches that I usually get are either a very well written LinkedIn message or a phone call, where they leave me a very well worded voicemail. And I'm going to be honest, I don't answer my phone much, and I don't even look at my voicemail very often. And so, if I notice that, somebody's tried to get me a couple of times and it's not trying to show up as a local number, and that sort of game, a well-placed cold call is still genius. But here's the thing: companies, talent acquisition teams work like this. They ask for money. They need a budget so that they can spend dollars on job ads and technology. And then they try to figure out what's the structure for my recruiting team. How many people do I need because I've got X number of open jobs? And then, do we need agencies on top of that, beyond that, or do we need an RPO type model? And what they're leaving out most of the time is the candidate's experience, the hiring manager's experience, and the recruiter's experience. So candidate experience is a big deal, but if the hiring manager isn't having a good experience with the recruitment, and the recruiter is also not having a very good experience because nobody's on the same page, it doesn't feel human. It doesn't feel like a home base where people want to go work. And you can tell when companies are not in sync when you do interview with them. And so inbound strategy is great because you can also, before you make that cold call, show up in that candidate's peripheral vision a number of times by connecting with them on social media, posting things they might be interested in, and even maybe tagging them, or liking and commenting on their stuff. So, show up a number of times and give a lot more than you ask, right? I use the 5-to-1 give to ask ratio. It's the 20% principle, 80-20. And if you are giving positive things, helpful things, a whole lot more than you're asking for referrals or look at my job or whatever, then people are more likely to say yes. And so that's why inbound is such a beautiful thing, and it does help you to be more human because people see you, right? You're showing up in their feed on a regular basis.
No, I love that. Well, let's so we got Dave just said hi from Toronto. So hi, Dave. We got Julia from Toronto. We've got a lot of Toronto here.
All right.
And we got some Miami here as well. Karen just says hi, and then she just says, I agree. So you said something wonderful, and she agrees with it. And you're dropping a lot of knowledge here. And then Aldo just had a question. So from the job search perspective, and I know you mentioned this at the beginning, I do want to touch point about this because there's probably people who are out there that are looking to build a personal brand while they're job searching. Yeah. What are a few quick tips that you can give to someone who's on the job search? They're looking to build their personal brand. What is effective? And like what would you advise someone to do? Let's say if they had half an hour, what would you use that half an hour of time to do to be effective on a job search? Just want to touch upon that.
Yeah, start an LLC. Like literally start your own company that you can put on your LinkedIn profile as your always on job, right? So even if you get another job, you're going to have your brand company open, and you can tell your employer, hey, that's just for side work. If you don't want me doing side work, it's fine, but I'm not going to take this off my LinkedIn profile, because when I'm between jobs, I ramp this back up. And that way you never have a hole in your experience, right? You've always got something going on. The other cool thing you can do with that is research companies that you want to work for, right? And, maybe compare them against 3 competitors, and then publish your research through your LinkedIn profile, through your company's page, or on your company's blog on LinkedIn if you want, or however you want to do it, but tie it to your company, right? Post it as an attachment under your little corporation. And when you do your LinkedIn post, tag all the people who might hire you at that company that you want to work for, and keep doing this, right? Become the subject matter expert in their eyes on the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's it. It's the first time I've ever heard that, actually, about the starting up an LLC and keeping it on a profile of that. And I'd say too, just find the hiring managers, or map out the companies you want to work with, engage on their content, show up, be helpful. And like you said before, like, giving is so big on LinkedIn, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's not hilarious, but I see CEOs, they will post on LinkedIn, and I've seen companies with thousands of people, the CEO will post and they'll get 3 likes on 1 comment. And, if you're that person that shows up and you give some insight, I'm not saying, say, love this or great post, but you actually consume whatever it is they posted, it can go a long way. And then Dave just asked, what's the most important aspect of personal branding you look for that factors into your decision to attempt to recruit a subject matter expert? So that's, I mean, Craig, you're an expert when it comes to employer branding and what to look for. I mean, what are the types of things that would make you a subject matter expert? I know you just touched upon that a little bit, but what are some more things that would make you an SME on LinkedIn?
So, any author or author coach, or even a speaker coach, will tell you that you have to sharpen your saw on a regular basis. So, research something and write about it every day, and that will hone your writing skills, right? Your writing gets better, and you become more regular, right, to your audience. And even if you use video, right, video is great, but you have to write an introduction to your video, and that can be long. That can be very long, and that fills it up with keywords. Yeah. And the more keywords are in the description of your video, the higher you're going to start ranking in the algorithm that shows it in the news feed. And so, definitely go get your friends to like and comment on it immediately, and babysit that thing for 20 minutes or so. And it's a commitment. But if I see somebody with really good writing, they know how to get their post blown up, they know how to interact with people, and they do a good job of it on a regular basis, that's the type of person I'm looking for. Carrie Corcoran, who is on this call, is working with me right now on 2 projects. She's part of the TalentNet team, and I went to her because she's very good at all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And Aldo just said that's an interesting idea. So yeah, and just said love the gap filler perspective as well. I'd agree. And then Karen, she just said great idea about showing up with companies you want to get hired for. Yeah, I love that. I'm curious. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the writing and the inbound marketing strategies with companies. And one of the things that was interesting that you said was about these AOL chat rooms. And in my mind, that's actually kind of what I think about when I think of Clubhouse. Is I think of it's kind of like these chat rooms that are going on. It's there's a lot of kind of spontaneity. You never know who's going to be in the room. What's been your take on that? Because I know we kind of have touched. We've run across each other in a couple rooms. I've seen that you're somewhat, showing up there regularly. How do you think that that's going to impact, or do you think could potentially have an impact with hiring and how some of these conversations have started? What's your take on the platform so far and this audio-based drop-in concept?
Yeah. So clearly it's popular, right? And because I tweeted something about this the other day, Clubhouse has built a great platform, and now they have to defend it because everybody else, 7 major players are getting into that audio only type of space. And it'll morph and change, and it'll become something that's more consumable, right? But right now, it's unique, and it's almost like being able to join a live radio show when they have call-ins. Everybody wants to do that if you're a fan of the show, and I think it's also very much like a live podcast where you could be on the show as well, and it's kind of always on. But very much like the radio, your favorite show isn't always on. I somehow got asked to be part of the Breakfast with Champions group, and so I am there every Wednesday afternoon with a whole bunch of famous people, talking about crazy stuff. It's not always the same. We're not always talking about recruiting or LinkedIn, but those things come up a lot. And so you kind of have to pick through and find the conversation that works for you and the room size that you're comfortable with. But even on a Saturday morning out for a hike, there's also very oftentimes more interesting conversations going on there than a lot of the podcasts that I listen to.
Do you think that the application for recruiters could be? I mean, do you think there's potential there to connect with candidates, or it's a good place to connect with candidates? And like, what would be your advice for, let's say a recruiter that got the invite and they're thinking, okay, how could I potentially use this? What kind of strategies do you think would work with that, or what advice would you have for people with that?
So
recruiters specifically.
Yeah, I think you can use Clubhouse to recruit salespeople. I know you can use it to recruit marketers and content creators. I know you can use it to recruit tech people, because the techies are all in the crypto rooms. So you can also use it to recruit financial people. You have to have a good BS meter, because in a lot of those crypto rooms, there's a lot of bad advice being given around, right? But you can't, because let's face it, they're artificially inflating things for their own selfish purposes. And so fine, whatever. But it's so easy to go check out somebody's profile and connect with them through Clubhouse. It's a much better way. So techies don't like to be on video very much. Trying to get if you're trying to recruit a programmer, they don't want to do a video call with you, right? They really don't want to be communicated with through LinkedIn either. So where are the places? What are the channels that you might have an alternate, right? And Clubhouse right now is very good. You can invite people to a private chat. Employers could use it to have their engineers on to talk about some of the projects they're working on, and have invite an audience to come hang out there for that. So I think there's lots of applications.
Yeah, and I know LinkedIn's talking about kind of adding in their own function as well.
Already started. Yeah.
And I know that they've just added creator mode as well. So I'm curious, do you have access to the creator mode on LinkedIn?
I do.
Okay.
It's interesting. I haven't done much with it yet, but I got invited, and it's they just want more content. They want more free content, basically, is what they want. And I'm fine with that. That's user generated content is the best. Any employer that is not giving their employees permission to use a common hashtag about work when they post anything online, they're doing it wrong, right? Any press is good press most of the time, and if it's free and it's from your employees, that's genius. So LinkedIn, we're not their employees, we're their customers, and if you can get customer generated content, that's great as well. It's why Yelp is so popular, right? People like to complain, but people also will give good reviews if done right. And I'm gonna play with it. We'll see. There's too many things for me to touch right now. I don't have time for it all, but I'm trying to do a little bit every day. And I don't know. Lars and I are gonna jump on and do a Twitter space. Sometime soon this week, and do cool tools there. So we're dipping our toe in everywhere.
I think I've seen some of the Twitter spaces going on. It's funny. I know with like this, just touching on that LinkedIn creator mode, one of the things they're going to be adding is a 20-second story that lives behind the profile picture. Now I'm kind of conflicted just in my thoughts of that, because I think if you're in sales or you're an entrepreneur, awesome, right? But I'm just thinking, like, for job seekers, is that going to put? What are your thoughts in that playing? Kind of maybe against some job seekers, or maybe creating even more bias with certain decisions. And then the other question I would have: do you think that, like, high level leadership within big brands and big companies would take advantage of that type of feature, or who do you think is going to really take advantage of that kind of creative mode with that video story?
So the ones who actually post things themselves, actually will write blog posts, do their own tweets. The ones that get it will take advantage of that sort of thing. I coach executives all the time through things like this for companies, right? And some of them just want someone else to do it. Some of them are very much more comfortable doing that stuff themselves, and if they are, I would recommend it. Yeah, and for job seekers, I think it's a great opportunity, right? I mean, if everybody has an even playing field, but they don't right now. So yeah, that's going to cause some problems. But when everybody does, and it will roll out eventually, this whole invitation.
Yeah, I think it's like within a month. They said that it should roll out, because I haven't got it yet.
Yeah, so it's just a real good opportunity to showcase, a little bit of your personality, a little bit about yourself. I'm a big fan of putting some personal stuff in my about section on LinkedIn. I right there that I have 2 kids and we live by Grapevine Lake, and no, 3 boys and we live by Grapevine Lake, right? 2 kids, 2 dogs, 2 dogs, 3 boys.
Someone's feeling really left out right now.
1 wife. Yeah. But all those things, I always say that you should have 3 things that you're always comfortable talking about in places online or in public. And they're the 3 things that you want people to remember about you, because they're more interesting to people than your job title, for instance. But then it's also a good opportunity to showcase a little bit about your expertise. What are you an SME in? And if you can't say all that stuff in 20 seconds, you got to practice better, because that's your elevator pitch.
Yeah, no, that's super great advice there as well. When you're coaching executives and you're coaching leaders, what do you is there a shift in mindset, or like what do you see as some of those kind of big barriers with stuff like LinkedIn content and like putting themselves out there? Because I run in this a lot, like when I'm having conversations, with people about putting out LinkedIn content as recruiters. There's always those kind of barriers. So what are some of those common barriers that you run into?
Yeah. So when I coach, so I do training for big teams, right? A lot of staffing agencies, a lot of employers, recruitment teams or sales teams. Sometimes there's social media teams, and then very oftentimes they'll invite their executives on, and then sometimes it leads to me doing work directly with them, and it depends on their mindset. So even on any kind of team, you're going to have some people that have a legacy mindset. They're averse to change, and they don't want to put their personal stuff out there in the world. And there are valid reasons for that. I mean, I've had multiple instances where people use my photos and become a doppelganger named something else, but they are kind of using my images to get people to send them money or whatever. And so, those are all legit concerns, but it's pretty easy to get that stuff removed when it does happen. I never use my kids' real names online. I only ever call them numbers 1, 2, and 3 sons. And so, if you can use, like I use my wife's initials way more than I ever use her name, that sort of thing. And so if you can use nicknames for the loved ones you might want to protect, that's one example of a way that you can put yourself out there, get people to understand that you're a 3D human person more. And because that's the thing that's going to attract your audience. And that's, people want to know about you.
I mean, you've seen a huge shift on LinkedIn. I think we all have, with more personal content than ever. And, I'm definitely, spend 5 minutes on my my posts, you're going to see,
Yeah.
a big mix of personal, like I'm constantly pushing the boundary with what I put out there. Some of that's testing, testing to see what works and testing out different things. But what do you, I guess, what are your thoughts behind that change? And do you see that as something that's directly related to the pandemic and work from home situation, and it's really reflecting like overall where business is going? Or do you see this as like a negative effect on the platform and something which, might change? I guess where do you see kind of branding and personal branding going in that sense, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so there's a lot of complaining. I mean, we hear this on Clubhouse a lot. A lot of people complain about the oversharing on LinkedIn and the over emotional stories and things like that. LinkedIn is encouraging this. Okay, they pump those stories up in the algorithm. When people connect at a human level, LinkedIn would love to be considered the Facebook for business, right? And they kind of are, and that's what they're going for. That's why they're started with video. That's why they made that a huge priority.
Yeah.
And this audio thing will probably be the same way. They'll push it hard. So they're encouraging these kind of more personal conversations. It is a little bit of a fallout from work from home and the gig economy, and we were going that way before COVID. So we can't blame it on COVID necessarily.
Kind of accelerated it, maybe.
Kind of accelerated, right? Yeah. I mean, very, very coincidentally, it came at a really, really critical time, right? So it's a little insane how the world has shaped up. But if you're one of these people that doesn't like change because you're used to something being the way it has been forever, like not all this personal stuff on LinkedIn, you're going to have to swallow that a little bit and get with the program, because change is going to be constant from here on out.
Do you think that's going to drive away? For example, I don't want to just label a whole group of people, but I don't know. Let's say if we look at C-suite leadership, where I guess a lot of times I'm hearing that's kind of where I hear a lot of complaints coming from. But then obviously there's a lot of articles now around like mental health and kind of like that work from home burnout and how do we balance work from home life with business. But do you see that, maybe like a large portion of LinkedIn users that kind of like things how they were? Do you see people disconnecting, or do you think it is more of a case that most of those people, because they have business equity in the platform, will just kind of swallow that and just keep on moving forward with the platform? Or do you think a lot of people will leave?
We've been speculating that people are going to leave the platform ever since LinkedIn started allowing automated marketing bots to spam you with messages. And so what that does for me is it drives me a little farther away from my LinkedIn inbox, but it doesn't keep me off the platform, right? So many people still rely on LinkedIn to do their business, to generate leads, whether they're for recruiting or sales. And, it's one of the major platforms for advertising as well. It's kind of expensive and it's not my favorite. I'm not sure it always works the best, but you can do account-based marketing on Indeed, which is hard to do in other places. And that's a real benefit. So, like anything else, you get tired of it, but you have to be consistent. And this is why I think the smart people will stick with it. Because across all your channels, if you're going to have a channel, you need to be, even if you're automating some stuff, I don't care, that's fine. But there has to be some consistency there, or your audience will fall away. And people do this all the time when they're in job search mode, right? I just changed jobs, and so I need to ramp up, or I'm looking for a job, so I need to ramp up. And then they get busy and they go away for a year or two, and they come back and they're like, why isn't this as effective for me? Well, it's because you're not consistent, right? Your audience expects consistency. And so when you give them that, even if you're just posting once a week, it's better than nothing. And so got to keep going back.
It's so funny because I think, that was one of the big things that switched in my mind with LinkedIn in general. Was it is just such a powerful tool for real networking and really connecting with people. And it was something that, when it comes to like physical networking or face-to-face networking, I've never really felt like I was that great at networking events.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn, I found it really a lot easier to connect with someone. Hey, are you open to a quick conversation? And even if they weren't in my field or somebody that I was targeting for business, I had a lot of those conversations, and I got a lot of great returns out of that and really built my network. But I do, to your point, I think it's a consistency, and it's like once you get that job, still carrying on networking. And
Right.
usually it's like networking goes up when you're job seeking, like you say, and then just goes right back down. Dave, I want to finish off with this last question here, because I actually think it's really good. So Dave just said, do you feel like platforms are creating too many communication channels? Do all of these new features give recruiters more or less opportunity to find talent? And I think we hear that a lot with like technology. Is it helping?
Yeah.
Is it hindering? What are your thoughts on that? If you were coming into the industry as a recruiter today, do you think that these tools and all the channels make it easier or create more opportunity, or they just make it harder for people to figure out the best route?
So I like free stuff. Okay. So I'm going to start there. As long as these channels are free, it's always a good opportunity for recruiters. When you start having to pay for them, like I've been doing for LinkedIn for a long, long time, then, there's a little bit of a barrier there. But I like the premium profile features I get on LinkedIn. And all of these channels will make that sort of switch. So, you like your account right now, it's great, but we're going to show you a bunch of ads. And if you want to stop that, we're going to charge a little bit of a fee. It's going to happen with everything. So you will have to pick your poison at some point. But as long as they're free, utilize everything you can, right? We've got a real problem getting people to apply for jobs right now, especially in, kind of blue collar jobs, healthcare, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you use all the channels that you possibly can get your hands on? You do have to really, mark your day and set your times when you're going to do this sort of activity. And if you don't already know the best times to make phone calls and the best time to get a hold of somebody and the best time to post something on LinkedIn in order to get eyeballs on it and all that stuff, well, you need to study a little bit, because you're not doing it right. If you're just sending out emails, posting jobs, and then making phone calls, and you're successful that way, great. I'm not going to try to break your process. But if you could be 5% better by doing a little bit of social media on a regular basis, why not do that? You only have to be this much better than your competition to win, right? It doesn't have to be up here, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. Great advice. I love it. Well, typically let the show go to about 45 minutes. So that was a great question, Dave, as well. And I appreciate everybody's engagement here. So Dave, Aldo, Hamid, Karen, Mawa, great to see all you guys out there too. And I really appreciate these questions. Craig, if you could give, and I always like to end the show list, if you were to give somebody who's just entering into recruitment, or maybe this, like their first year was, this just kind of crazy period of time we've had, what advice would you give to somebody? And particularly if they were just feeling like, I don't know if recruiting is for me, or I don't know, like if this is the best field for me to be in. What advice would you give to them, or would you give to someone who's in that situation?
Yeah, find a mentor. Find somebody who's doing it well. Watch, the people that you admire or respect on social media, LinkedIn, places like that, and watch what they do. Study how they do things. What's their cadence? And then, when you get to where you've got a relationship with somebody, ask them if they'll share a little bit of their time with you and mentor you, because you'd be surprised how quickly you can make great strides when you talk to people that have shortcuts.
Yeah, 100%. And is there anybody that you would recommend outside of yourself that you look to, or you think, man, that person's got a great strategy on social, they're doing amazing things in the recruitment world? Anyone that comes to mind?
Well, so Lars Schmidt is amazing, right? He's one of my collaborators and partners. I'm a mentor to Mike Batman Cohen. but he is a great mentor to a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So I seem like I'm just naming all my friends, but
but that's how it becomes, right? On LinkedIn,
Yeah.
it starts off with those connections, and you really do develop a ton of friends. So I love
that's
that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
William Tincup would be another.
Awesome.
He's amazing.
Well, Craig, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Where can they find you? Obviously, LinkedIn. Anywhere else that's a good place to reach you, or anywhere else?
Yeah.
Go.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at FishDogs, SFISHDOGS. You can find my website, that's my personal website about me and my speaking career and things like that, at fishdogs.com or craigfisher.info. It's all the same. And go check out talentnetmedia.com or talentnetlive.com to find out about the next event that we have coming up, which is November 12th.
Awesome.
And we hope that is going to be a hybrid event, both in person and streaming online.
And where is that going to be held at?
We don't know yet. We usually do large employers' headquarters. The last time we did it in person, we were at Toyota's headquarters here in Plano, Texas. And we've been at Capital One, Southwest Airlines, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, JCPenney, Pizza Hut, you name it. We've got all these great, wonderful Fortune 500 headquarters here in the Dallas area. And then in the spring, we're always at Whole Foods Market World Headquarters in Austin. So, hopefully we'll find an employer that wants to host us this year.
Awesome. Love it. Well, definitely, if you're not following Craig, go follow him. Check him out on Twitter, Instagram, and go to his website as well. I'll post those links as well in the comments afterwards. So revisit this live show and you'll be able to see that. And then Dave, he just said thanks for the amazing content. And Karen too, she left a nice note just saying great advice on being consistent on LinkedIn. So Greg, I really appreciate your time, man. I'm so glad we got to do this. I'll be repurposing this into the podcast as well. So I'll send those links over. Again, appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to chat on Clubhouse soon again. And thanks again for showing up today.
Thanks, Joel. Great time. I really enjoyed it.
And I'll just end this.